Elizabeth Ford of Blackwater Press, and I'm here with our author Melanie McGee Bianchi to discuss her forthcoming short story collection, The Ballad of Cherrystoke and Other Stories, which we will publish this June. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We're delighted. So this is a collection of stories set in largely the same specific area of Southern Appalachia. And I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about how the setting and the geography plays an important part in your stories.
Well, it's interesting. I think so. I live in Asheville, and I've lived in the Asheville area, basic area, for about 30 years now. So most of my adult life, and you know, it's interesting because I think Asheville has, geographically and culturally, has some aspects about it that make it unique in some ways. In you know, where it lies, you know, near the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which is the most visited national park in the country, and you know, it's being the southerly position is near Charlotte, near Atlanta. So it's been a tourist destination for, you know, as long as anyone can remember. And I was, you know, it's funny when you live somewhere a long time, you tend to take things for granted. Like I was driving around yesterday and I saw a sign for the Thomas Wolfe House, and it made me realize that I'll say part of what I explore in my stories is sort of the you know, Asheville is a place that has grown and changed enormously in the last 20 years or so. You know, it's on everyone's radar. The town is exploding, you know, population more than any place in the state. But you know, and there's some inherent friction in that, and the gentrification of a place. But so it's sort of a new problem or a new issue, but it's not really, because anyone who's read Thomas Wolfe, you know, his Locomotive Angel was written in 1916, and over 100 years ago, that book basically, one of the main themes is he's dealing with the frictions that come when a lot of visitors come to an area and change it. So it's that whole tourist versus townie thing that I don't think is explored a lot in Appalachian fiction, and it's certainly not a theme that I went in consciously, but it's sort of, because as these stories grew over a number of years when I was writing them, I realized that theme was coming up quite a few times. I mean, so you've got the beautiful landscape, you know, Asheville sits in a literal bowl with the Blue Ridge on one side, Smokies on the other. You've got that informing the stories, but also this, it's for Southern Appalachia is in Asheville especially, it's a resort town. It's you know, it's a destination, and that brings in themes that you maybe don't necessarily find in Appalachian fiction that's more rurally based. I think there's not a lot written about the towns of Southern Appalachia, you know.
No, there isn't. There's a great deal about mountainsides and very small country communities and families.
Exactly, both not
set in actual towns.
Exactly, and that's fair, because the landscape it's life-changing. It's 1 million years old. It informs everything. But you know, when you really get into these other issues, like new themes can develop, I think.
Do you think it's fair to say that the landscape and the geography are a character in your stories, or more of a theme?
I think so. In one, and this might have to do with again with maybe how they're paced. I'm a journalist. You know, I've been a journalist, lifestyle features journalist for a long time, and I think that one of the things that carries over to my fiction, for better or worse, from my career is a sense of tight pacing, and that the story has to be told in a certain way. Then, you know, there's no meandering allowed, or you know, and something about the way Asheville sits, it's I have this theory that, you know, it can feel like a hug, or it can even sort of feel claustrophobic sometimes. And I think the landscape, I don't know, there's a heightened sense of drama about the area, I would say. I mean, I'm sort of developing this even as I'm talking,
Mhm.
but it's not quite the I think it's tighter paced than most, maybe some people think about stories set in the area, if that's fair. And
Yeah,
that,
I think that's fair.
yeah.
I think that's fair. And I think, how much do you think that your career has influenced your fiction writing style?
You know, it's funny because I started as a fiction writer. I had some early success really early on, you know, writing for some teen magazines and stuff. And then I got into, you know, moved to Asheville and got into journalism. And when in the back of my mind, I always wanted to go back to fiction, but, you know, life intervened. And then I began to worry a lot that that my training as a journalist would affect my fiction writing negatively, and that like there was the danger that I would simply report things instead of you know, show it happening, you know, that was just going to be like a story that was reported with all angles. But then after a while I realized it could be a boon as well, because of that, the sense of urgency that that can make a good short story, like a tight pacing and a sense of just telling an old-fashioned story and not letting like things like, you know, minimalism or modern, I don't know, modernism or something get in the way, but just the story must be told in the best way possible. So I think it's yeah, it goes back and forth.
Yeah, I would probably be inclined to
Yeah,
you on that.
I mean, I should emphasize that I'm not a news journalist. I'm a features lifestyle, lots of music writing. I was a music reporter for a long time, arts, visual arts, performing arts, and I've been an editor for the latter part of my career. But the thing about writing about this kind of writing is that you have to make a story out of anything. You know what I mean? Like if your story is the death and rise of the American chestnut tree, that has to be interesting, you know, and for the lay reader, because I, you know, work for magazines and newspapers that are for lay reader, for people picking it up. And so, you know, you have horticulture, all those topics I've touched on, and you have to make it inherently interesting, even if it's a 3,000 word feature or a 100-word 150-word blurb about a show coming up. It has to be interesting and tight. So I think that plays into it.
Could you address some of the other themes throughout your collection?
Sure. You know, I've been surrounded by there's a lot of music in it, and it almost feels, sometimes it feels incidental, but then I realized a motif did sort of arise. And you know, my husband plays banjo and guitar. I've been around musicians a lot. I was raised largely by a grandmother who's a concert pianist. And piano shows up in one story, but mostly it's the old time music of the mountains, and you know, of this area, fiddle tunes, and of course the stories that some of the ballads that people will know if they know about this music are you know, so inherently fascinating. And you know, it seems like each new generation discovers these 400-year-old songs, you know, and something about the sorrow of them that is so at one with the feeling of this area, that it just, even though I was determined to write contemporary fiction and they are set they're all contemporary settings, meaning the last 20-25 years, I couldn't help but put the music came through over and over again. I mean, you know, I wrote a story, one of the stories is about a contra dance. You know, one of the stories is the story that the collection is named for, Ballad of Cherrystoke, features a young banjo playing freight hopper, which is a subculture, and in the story set in modern times, but something about that music is literally timeless, in that you can take a modern story with a certain, and any piece of human theater with sorrow, you know, love, violence, will resound in those songs. And I just guess being exposed to it for this many years, it showed up whether I was planning it or not.
Sort of an accidental osmosis of the musical culture and the legends.
It's interesting when you go to when you start right. I didn't think that I had a collection until I was about 5 stories into it, and then that's when you don't arrange motifs necessarily, they just all start to pop up, and then that sort of catches fire. And then I said, well, this is a thing that's happening in these stories, why don't I start doing it consciously, In Abigail's Revenge, I even make up a ballad, which is sort of audacious of me, I think, but that is my story that I was trying to, it's almost it's so layered, there's a story within a story within a story, but the ballad that comes up in there is, it's not a real ballad, I made that up. And
it certainly could be.
Thank you. I mean, it has
ticks all the boxes.
Exactly.
Very dramatic, bleak, grim story, completely emotion-free telling or presentation.
Yes, exactly. And that's
my supernatural creature that's annoying in it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Right. And there's always that familiar, the little animal familiar that comes in, and yeah, I think we talked about how or I mentioned how many animals were in my story too.
We did the other day, yeah. Animals are definitely a theme.
They are. Yeah. There's a huge. I started counting them up like a body count. I'm like, gosh, there's I forgot that. Oh yeah, there's 2 cats in that one as well as 2 dogs, and then there's there's birds that come in, and there's the possibly hamster. Rabid baby possums. There's a hamster. There's a rabid weasel. Yeah, they all come in.
Yeah, I think I'm partial to the baby possum. But
yeah, thank you.
I liked him.
Yeah,
it's such an unusual creature to find in a short story, really.
Yeah, yes, and they should be in more short stories, I think.
They should. They should. Is there anything else you can say about some of the background, other than anything in addition to cultural history and geography?
Well, I think that it was hard not to, in some places, sort of delve into the minutia of how, the word Asheville does not appear in any of these stories. It's on purpose. I wanted it to be character driven more than anything, because I just wanted to, the people's stories came to me first, the characters came to me first, and part of the reason that it's set here is because I'm here. I've been here for 30 years, and although this is fiction, a lot of it is influenced by people that I've known and the way the area has changed. When I came here in the early 90s, and there was one bar downtown, and now we're so much known as the brewery capital of the country that it's not even, it's just a given. But when I was in the background, as far as the conflict between people coming here with lots of money, and the people still trying to hold on to their roots or their jobs, their lifestyle. I think again, that's something that's particularly here in Southern Appalachia, but you wouldn't know that my stories were set in and around Asheville, because I don't want them to be that topical, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I guess I didn't really answer the question, but there's at times I wanted to capture what it felt like to be in a beautiful town like this right before it became a national sensation or some, and then and some of the stories are rural. One of the more recent ones, and perhaps my personal favorite, is about a woman living out, in the county, as it were, or in the rurally, and she has a shed on her property that her grown children try to turn into an Airbnb, and so there's humor in them too, and that's something I've maybe not emphasized much, but that I intended. I didn't want it to be unrelentingly grim. So it's the changing landscape. I mean, the changing cultural landscape is part of is much a part of the stories as maybe the natural landscape. But anyway, so her grown son tries to rent her shed as a B&B, and it, of course, conflict ensues, as you might expect.
I would say too that you're able to present this changing world and changing town and changing landscape in a completely unsentimental and unnostalgic way, which I think is unique, especially for so-called Appalachian.
Thank you.
Which can tend to drag towards bygone days.
Yes.
Especially things which may contain ballad or music references that also can tend to hearken to the good old days.
Right.
Something which I think you have successfully avoided and really makes your book stand out.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Your contemporaries.
Thank you. I really sentimental writing has always rubbed me the wrong way, which is probably why I drifted into journalism. And my reporters, the freelancers who work for me, I edit 3 magazines, and they will complain that I take. I'm the first one to take any hint of sentimentality out of their writing, and I don't know what it is. I guess that it seems inauthentic to me, and and I guess it's so easy to do that, to bygone days, and to be folksy, and it goes along with a cliche that's very easy to slide into, and so I think my natural voice is dry, but over the years I've gotten even more so, and maybe jaded, but so yeah, it's kind of like almost a little bit of just the facts, but or just trying to keep that sort of folksy, triacly thing out of it. To I don't know. I think it just seems something like it's so easy to do and so easy to it appeals too widely or something. I don't know. Yeah, but that's it's a challenge too. Like how do you portray a love story, which Abdiel's Revenge definitely is, without making it soppy? You rarely see love stories in contemporary literary short fiction because it's too.
You don't have enough. You feel you don't have enough room to do it.
Right. Exactly. So it's like, how do you make it not be completely? I don't know, ride that line between it being sort of so dry, so modern and passionless, but convey the passion without making it I don't know, without making it like a sunset view, or what I call the horizon shot. You go, sometimes you go to the anything like the Southern fiction or regional fiction, and every book that you see has a sun the twilight shot, you know what I mean? Like try not to make sunset writing, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I think I know what you mean. Well, your favorite story is also mine, but I was hoping but I was hoping you could tell us some more about the others in the collection.
Okay. It's funny because there's stories. I think with every writer, your favorite story is the one that you last wrote, because you feel like that's the best one, because you've grown just that much more since the last story. But so yeah, when I was looking over the book, I had to sort of go back and revisit some of the older ones. And then, so yeah, let me see, there's a couple that take place in, there's one that takes place in a band house, meaning like, and it's interesting because this, I don't even know if this is a bygone thing, but with the way, it's so hard to make to get by these days for young people like in their 20s. I don't even know if this is a thing anymore, but I have a story that takes place in the 90s about people, a bunch of people that are all living in a house. There's all members of a band trying to make it on the Americana scene of the early 2000s, and then all renting rooms in a house and like the conflict therein. I have a story about a school bus that, I mean, that there are little points of drama. None of these stories are like addressing huge, there's usually like a comic point, like there's a story where a school bus gets stranded on the Blue Ridge Parkway because the teacher is trying to use her GPS to steer the bus to a field trip, and GPS that everyone, if you're from here, the GPS doesn't work on the parkway. She doesn't know that. So, it's the crisis that happens on top of the parkway with a stalled bus. There's a story about, a young woman who tries to seduce a monk in an abbey. I mean, someone said they were my stories were salacious. I didn't think that was quite fair, but maybe they are. But and then there's one about a young man who is on the run with his girlfriend for various nefarious reasons. I guess they're gritty. Someone called them rough humanity stories, so I guess that could be fair, but not in the cliched sense that you think of. Again, a lot of Appalachian writing, that's I'm not writing about. There's no meth labs that appear in my stories that I know of. I mean, I'd have to go back and comb them, but I don't think there are.
There are no meth labs.
Okay.
I was on the lookout for that as your representative of West Virginia, and I was looking for meth labs.
Right. And I'm glad that there are, because there's more, and not that that's not a thing, but it's also a trope, and I didn't want that. Let me see, there's a story, my one story that I thought maybe could be a young adult story is about two girls who decide that that they make a voodoo doll of their neighbor because they decide that he's something that maybe he's not. So I mean, it sounds so funny when I say them, and maybe they are funny, but and so it's these people, like, I don't know, it's small incidents that perhaps have a wider resonance. I should say that I was thinking about this the other day. I was talking to a friend of mine. So many people move here from big cities. Especially in the last 15, 20 years. I should point out that Asheville is the biggest place I've ever lived. Like my hometown, has 5,000 cows and 2,000 people. I moved around a lot as a kid, but the one town I would say up north that I spent the most time as a child, unincorporated, so Asheville's the biggest place I've ever lived. So this is my big city, really, so a lot of these stories might seem on the surface like they're not dealing with life and death issues, but again, like you said, I hope that they're not what you think of as typical, maybe folksy mountain stories either. They're the stories have issues. They have their own issues, if you will.
No, I think I would agree with that. Okay, well, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. I'm so excited.
And everyone, please look for the Ballad of Cherrystoke and other stories in June.
Can't wait. Thank you.
Thank you.